Hey everybody, I'm Charlie Craven, and I am going to tie you a fly that I've been waiting to do. This is one of my favorite old-timey streamers. This is a Platte River Special. And what has been making me wait, this fly was in my streamer book, and this is a fly I fish a lot, but what's been making me wait is I've been waiting for the arrival of this hook. Conventionally, I've tied this fly on a regular 200R in a size 4, which honestly is just fine in that big size 4. But now we have the 201R, which is stouter wire and that sexy black nickel. So I've been holding off on this one until those hooks came in. They came in yesterday. Well, who knows when this video will go out. But anyway, they came in yesterday as of today. And we've got these big ones. So I grabbed some up, and I'm going to twist you up a Platte River Special. This is a beautiful old school streamer pattern. This is before the days of lead eyes and big spun hair heads and articulation. This is a little minnow imitation, and I very often fish this fly behind a gonga or a lead-eyed bugger. Back in the day before the gonga, lead-eyed bugger with the Platte River Special behind it was a murderous rig, and still is, I can guarantee you. But just a subtle little streamer, and with no weight on it, fishing it behind a weighted fly, especially fishing from a boat, you can put this one right up on the bank, right in an inch of water, and it doesn't plummet down. You can fish it out off that shelf, and man, the fish like it. They also don't see stuff like this very often anymore. You young whippersnappers all like those big giant heavy flies, and maybe something from the old school might give them a different look. That's all I'm going to say about that. You decipher that as you will. And you're all going to ask me at the end how I made this so beautiful, and I will show you, but don't forget, I'm just much smarter and more talented than you. There's a secret to making that thing look so pretty when it's all said and done, and I'll show you that as well. So, without any further ado, let's twist one of these up. Get that guy out of my vise. I'm going to put a 201R in my vise. And I'm going to take some, this is A.dot Veevus, 72 denier Magpie would work well here. 70 denier UTC works well here also. But I'm going to start this thread just a couple eye lengths behind the hook eye. And the first thing I want to do is make a nice smooth even thread base all the way back to the bend. And I want to try to keep that thread real flat as I go. And I'm going to come down around that curve a bit. And then forward again, back up to my starting point. So I'm just dressing the hook. You may need to manage your thread a little bit if you start to get thread twist. One thing I've noticed with these black nickel finish hooks is they're very slick. That finish is very smooth. So a good solid thread base is important to make that body stay where it's supposed to. So what I've got here is a piece of gold standard tubing, like micro tubing. It comes in standard size also, which is bigger size stuff, and this is gold. Gold or orange, yellow would work too, but I'm going to catch this by the very end and anchor it down with 3 or 4 good tight wraps. Then I want to pull on it and wrap back over it to the bend. Now the original pattern had just a flat tinsel body, but back in the 80s I sort of altered it to put some tubing over the top of that tinsel to keep that tinsel from breaking. And it did make a big difference there. All right, now I'm going to take a piece of size 10 Danville Mylar tinsel. And this is, get a hold of it here, it's fairly wide tinsel. And it's gold on one side and silver on the other. And what I want to do, and you can see I just moved my thread barely forward there. I'm going to unwind back to where I tied that tubing down. And I'm going to tie this piece of tinsel in back here at the bend with just flat turns one in front of the other so I don't create a bump. And I've tied it in with the gold side facing me. And I'll continue that thread all the way up to my starting point. Now, I've got the gold side facing me, so as I fold this piece of tinsel, you can see that gold side is now facing you. I don't know how well you can see that, but it's gold. There you go. So I'm going to fold that, and I'm going to begin to wrap this. in just slightly overlapping turns. And one thing I find with tinsel is I always get a better wrap if I just wrap it as tightly as I can. So you can see I'm actually flexing that stout hook as I wrap that tinsel right up to the starting point, and I actually tie it off on top of the tie-in point, and I'll trim that tinsel out. Just a few turns to smooth that off. So nice smooth tinsel body. So now I'm going to pick up my tubing. I'm going to start back here at the back, and I'm just going to overwrap one turn in front of the other that tinsel body with the tubing, and you can see that changes it to sort of a golden color. You don't want any spaces or any overlaps ideally. I'll tie that off again just on top of the tie down point there. Anchor that good and tight, and then give that tubing a little stretch and snip it out of there. So we've got our body in place. Now I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to make a tapered base down to the hook eye and back again to just in front of that tie off. And this is where we're going to put the throat in. And what I like to use for the throat is red Darlon. So I'm going to take a couple inch long piece of red Darlon here. And what I do with it is I'll take it and fold it around the thread, like so. So that's a whole strand, and I've just folded it around the thread. And what I'm going to do is place it here just in front of that nub on the bottom of the hook, and I'm going to wrap back over it right up to the front edge of the body, keeping it centered on the bottom of the hook shank. And then I can come forward again, like so. And I'll come in, and I like to actually use curved scissors for this. I'm going to trim this throat, or this beard, so that the long end is maybe just short of the hook point. So we get kind of a little arch to it, and then you can kind of fluff that up a bit, like so. You can see that's pretty bright, but it's going to be veiled on the finished fly. All right, so now we're going to do the wings, and the wings have got, there's a method to it. We're going to use 4 feathers. We're going to use 2 yellow rooster neck feathers, and these are not your dry fly rooster necks. These are old whiting American streamer capes or Chinese capes. These are big, cheap feathers. And what I want to do is I want to find feathers that are about as wide as the gap of the hook, maybe a little wider, totally acceptable. And I want to measure them, so I've got 2 of them here. I want to get their tips even. And you don't have to worry hugely about how pretty the yellow ones are. They're going to be on the inside. But I want to measure these so that they're about 2 hook shanks long. So there's 1, there's 2. Yeah, about 2 hook shanks long. And what I'll do there is strip those fibers off right at that point, like so. And then I'll come in and clip them. And I like to leave a little bare stem showing there at the bottom. So then I'm going to take these 2 feathers and I'm going to oppose them, or they are sitting nested as they came off the cape. I'm going to put them inside to inside so that they're married together. Not opposed, I shouldn't have said that word. I hope I didn't throw you off. So I just married those together, like so. And then I can kind of check my length again. That's about the length that I want. Yeah, we're looking pretty good. So once I've got those set and married where the tips are even and the butts are even, I'll stick them in my mouth and just wet the tips. And I'll set that on the edge of my desk. Now I'm going to come in with my brown feathers, and I'm going to do the same process. And what I've got here are 2 furnace feathers. And again, these can come from a Chinese cape, or the whiting streamer capes are fantastic for this. But you want furnace, you want that dark center stripe. And you do want a neck feather rather than a saddle feather. Saddle feathers are just too narrow. You can see these wide neck feathers. You know, I get excited about this kind of stuff. It's hard to find these days. This is harder to find than good dry fly hackle. But whiting's got some great stuff. But what I want to do is I want to measure these 2 feathers against my yellows. Make sure that they're even. Measure them against my yellows and cut them to the same length. Or at least maybe just a little bit longer. You can always trim them more later. But I want to trim them to the same length. And then I'm going to strip the butt ends about the same distance as the yellow butt ends. I'm going to take the first feather and lay it on top and even the tips between the yellow and the brown, and I'll just push them down on top of the yellow feathers. So I've got one feather married up on the outside. I haven't done the other side yet. Now I'll take that bunch, and you can wet this feather again if you need to. A lot of times if you just stroke your fingers down the tips, it will stick that brown feather to the yellow feather. So now I'm going to put that other side up. And I'm going to even the tip of the other brown feather, evened up with the first three. Strip those butt ends so that they're all the same length. They all end at the same point, like so. Now sometimes these feathers will have a bit of a curve to them. If they do have a curve, I usually tie them in curve down. These are relatively straight. There's not, maybe just a little bit of a curve there. So I'm going to say curve down like this. Now what I've got here on the butt ends are 4 stems. And I want to cut those all to the same length. And I want to cut that length shorter than this distance here. So as I come in to measure this, I slide my fingers back, you can see that is shorter than the distance of the head area. So I'm going to bump my thread forward, and when I catch these, the trick to tying these in, let me get a couple turns on here. What I'm trying to do is get those 4 stems to lay 4 across. Brown on the outside, yellow, yellow, brown. So I'm trying to get them to lay 4 across. I don't want them stacked or twisted or bundled. I want them 4 across. And you may need to sort of push them into position and get them anchored. And then as I wrap back over them, I'm going to lift up on these feathers. This is how you keep this wing centered. I'm going to lift up on these feathers as I wrap back over them, right up to the front edge of the body. Like so. And that wing is pretty well centered on top of the hook. Yeah, we'll take that. So now for the collar, I'm going to take another yellow feather. And what I do with this one is I'm going to strip, I don't need much of this feather, I'm going to wrap this for the collar, but I'm going to strip a bare section from about, a little more than midway down. Then I'm going to create a separation point at the tip. And I like these fibers to be fairly long. This is a fairly large hackle in relation to the hook gap, probably 2 hook gaps, 2.5. I'm going to sweep these fibers back at that separation point. And I'm going to tie this in by its tip right here at the base of the wing. Get a few more turns on here and I'll show you what I just did. And I'll come forward over that tip and make sure it's anchored, and then I can cut the tip of the feather out. Now I'm going to take this hen feather, or this rooster feather, and I'm going to fold it like you might a hen feather on a prince nymph. You see that anytime I'm wrapping a soft feather, I generally fold it. Very rarely do I not. And I like the way this will lay back as I wrap. So I'm going to put one turn right in front of the other, working down that taper until I get to that bare stem. And the reason I left that bare stem is so that my tie-off is much cleaner. I can catch that with a couple turns just over that bare stem, anchor that down, and trim that off. Now I'm going to come in with 2 brown feathers, so still furnace feathers, but I'm going to prep these the same way that I did the yellow. And again, because we've got 2, and the reason I use 2 here is I want the bulk of the dark centers, but I don't need very much. It's not going to take very many turns to create what I need to here. And I'll create a separation point just with these 2 feathers stacked just as they came off the hide, like so. And I'm going to tie these in right in front of the yellows. The insides of those feathers are facing the hook shank. I'm going to anchor that tip down well, trim the tips off, and smooth out that base. And I'll bump my thread right up to the hook eye. Now I'm going to pick up these brown feathers, kind of get them separated from the yellow. I'll wet my fingers a bit and fold these fibers back again, just like we did with the yellow. I'll begin to wrap right at the front edge of the yellow. You can see I kind of just stroke these fibers back after each turn. Wasn't real happy with that one. We'll redo them. There we go. So I'm going to stroke these fibers back after each turn and put one turn in front of the last, right as close to it as I can get. I'm going to wrap right up close to the hook eye. And then I'll tie off that bare stem just behind the eye. And I can trim those two stems out. I didn't wet my brown feather enough. He's not staying in place. There we go. So now, to comb this hackle back, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pinch from the front and sweep this all back. Make sure that I'm not pushing it anywhere. I'll fold these little stubs back on my near side. I'll work from the front to the back over those stubs to build my thread head. And these are short, tight wraps. You can see I've only got, gosh, I probably don't have half a centimeter, 5 millimeters of thread out. So I can really control where these thread wraps go. Then I'll pick up my whip finisher and tie a nice clean whip finish. I'll trim this thread out. And one thing I've always admired about the old school flies is the glossy, shiny heads on the streamers. These days, rather than 11 coats of head cement, we could just come in with some Bone Dry Plus. I'm going to apply this to my needle here. And I'm going to coat that thread head all the way around. Try not to get it in your hook eye. Like so. And then I'm going to come in and hold the lamp far away as I rotate the fly and let that resin cure. Now you can absolutely take this fly out of your vise, tie it to your rod, and go fish. And it will come out of the water at the end of the day when you're done fishing. Hopefully all chewed up, but at any rate, it'll come out looking like that fly. And the reason for it is once you fish the fly, it sweeps everything and sort of blends everything back together. The water does. And what I do to clean these up and make these really pretty, because that's half the battle, is I take this fly and I hold it in a pair of forceps and I run it under the kitchen sink. And I let water flow back over it. And then you can either just let it dry, or you can use a hair dryer. And if you blow the hair dryer from the front end, it will smooth everything back, comb everything together, and blend those wings together just beautifully. Like I say, you can absolutely fish it. Where I got that idea years ago was tarpon fishing, and having a tarpon fly with a very similar wing, just tied further back on the hook, very similar wing to that I had fished for a while, and then we ran the boat, and the wind blew over the fly and blended everything back together, and the fly was even better than it started after the wind had blown on it. So you can see how that blends everything all together, blends those colors nicely. Just hard to argue with. But that is the secret to blending the wing and hackle all together and cleaning it up just beautifully. Now, if you've got a random hackle fiber sticking out, you can grab that with your tweezers. You're guaranteed to catch more fish without that sticking out of there. But there he is, and this is what he looks like after a wash and blow dry. Everybody looks better after a wash and blow dry, don't you think? That's him. That's the Platte River Special. Cool, old school bug that you should have in your box. Really great lateral line, small minnow imitation, that young of the year brown trout that's 2 inches long. If you ever pull your boat over on the Colorado River and look down in the water, just sit still for a little bit, you'll see lots of little minnows that are this size or even smaller. This is a size 4. This is a big one. You can tie these down to an 8 pretty comfortably. And this is a great little fly for that kind of thing. Good follow-up fly, good secondary fly. It's a fly that you should throw. I'm tired of trying to talk you into it. Go fish the damn thing. You're going to like it. It's beautiful, isn't it? Told you. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm Charlie Craven. I hope you have a good day. My day just got better. That's a beautiful fly. That makes me happy. All right, guys, take care.